Well, here it is, Thursday, the middle of January already. Gonna be spring pretty soon, but we're still looking at snow. The streets are clear, but there's still plenty of snow on the ground. I don't know what the temperature is here. I haven't checked it. I never do check it unless I'm getting ready to go somewhere. So I decided I'd change my direction today, give you a different background for a change. Can't see much of the side of my face because it's facing the dark side. In fact, I may turn a lamp on and see if it'll give me a little more light. Let's see here what we got. Well, that didn't do much, but that's okay. I'm wearing my Paris shirt today. You see the Eiffel Tower. I've got my London shirt and I've got my Paris shirt. I guess I'll have to get another shirt that says University of Kentucky Wildcats on it. I've never owned one of the sports shirts. It just never appealed to me. But I've also got one that says, it's pink too, it says Chit Chat with Granny Pat. I need to get that out and wear it when I'm doing my videos so that you'll know that you can go on Etsy and you can order the same shirt for yourself. So anyway, let's see where I want to get started here. I was in Kroger about 3 days ago, ran into one of my neighbors, hadn't seen her in ages, and I looked at her and I said, "Where have you been? I don't see you around much anymore." And she says, "Oh, I've been to Paris." Oh my God, she's been to Paris. Paris, France? Yes. See, we have Paris, Kentucky, that's just about 10 miles from where we live. But she'd been to Paris, France. She'd been gone for 3 weeks. Did you go by yourself? Yes, I did. You weren't with anybody? No, I don't have to have someone with me. I said, I don't think I could travel alone. No problem at all. You can have just as much fun in Paris by yourself as you can with someone. I knew she had been to Paris several times. Sometimes she goes and stays 3 months at a time. Well, that sounds good, but that's kind of out of my price range. So I've never been, but I've got my Paris shirt. This is one of my favorite shirts anyway. And everybody says I look good in pink. Okay, let's get on with my story. What did I decide to talk about today? Oh, I know what it was. I was on Google and I spotted a picture of something I recognized. Oh, I remember that. Yes, I can do a story. Let's go back in time. You like when I tell the old stories back in time. This one, let's see, it goes back 70 years. Is that good enough for you? 70 years? Do you realize I was graduating from high school 70 years ago? Whew, some of these things are hard for me to believe. But there was something about this picture that took me back. It was May of 1954. We were getting ready for our senior trip. The senior class was going to go to Washington, D.C. Each year, that was the senior trip, Washington, D.C. Well, that was going to work out really well for me. And I was doing everything in my power to convince Mama that I should go on the senior trip, because it's probably the only time I would ever get to Washington, D.C. That's what I thought. Well, first week in May, it was a 10-hour drive. We were aboard a big, I suppose it was a Greyhound bus. Every seat on the bus had been taken. In fact, it was overloaded, and I ended up having to sit 3 in 2 seats. And you know who got to sit in the middle? You know, where the seat goes like this? Yeah, me. 10 hours. Midnight. Raining. We pulled up in front of the Houston Hotel. That's where we would be staying. Well, by chance, one person on the bus was getting all of the attention. Even though it was raining outside, everybody was handing her an umbrella. Let her off first. Let her off first. Well, the person they were talking about just happened to be me. They were handing me the umbrella so I wouldn't get wet. Of course, the hotel had a canopy over the front door. There was a young man standing there waiting for our bus. It happened to be my boyfriend. They were treating me like I was a celebrity or something on the bus, saying, "Let Pat off first. Here, give her an umbrella. She's going to get wet." They could see this handsome, and I do mean handsome, young man standing under the canopy, waiting. I was a nervous wreck. They practically pushed me off the bus, and everybody waited. They waited to see what we were going to do. Well, I was a little bit on the shy side, and I wasn't about to run up to him and give him a big hug and kiss. That just wasn't in me, but they were waiting. My classmates were waiting to see what we would do. So this handsome young man helped me down the step as I got off the bus. All right. Now, he was going to stay at the hotel that week. He had taken leave from his Coast Guard assignment. He was in the Coast Guard and was stationed in Alexandria, Virginia, which was just across the river from Washington. So I got permission from our tour guides. The director of music at the high school was Mr. Griffey. He was one of the tour guides, and the other one was Miss Morgan. She was the librarian. So they were going to be there to make sure everything was so, and we minded our P's and Q's. They were grinning from ear to ear watching what was going on. They had given permission for my boyfriend to stay in the hotel with some of my classmates for a week. He was going to be taking a tour of Washington with us on our bus. Okay, it was the next morning. Everybody's getting ready to go somewhere for breakfast. We were near the the Ford Theater. Ford Theater. You know what that's known for, don't you? That's where President Lincoln was shot. It was just a few blocks from where we were staying. So my boyfriend and I, we separated from the rest of the crowd. We wanted a little privacy. So we walked a few blocks down the street to a small cafe serving breakfast. As I recall, I think I was eating a donut, glazed donut, when he reached in his pocket, pulled out a little case, and he opened it up, and out came an engagement ring. And that's when he asked if I would marry him. Well, I was in a daze. I didn't know what to do or what to say, but I took the ring and I shook my head yes. We finished our breakfast and we walked back to the hotel, and again, all of the attention was focused on me. Everybody wanted to see my diamond ring. Now, it wasn't this ring, but it was almost like this ring. Everybody wanted to see it. And Miss Morgan and Mr. Griffey, they were right there, shaking their heads, and Mr. Griffey said, well, I've seen people become engaged. I've seen the ring put on a girl's finger many times, but I never heard of them being asked the question at a breakfast table. Well, I was the first then. Okay, I'm getting to the main point of my story. My boyfriend had his own car. It was a little one-seater. I think it was a Plymouth. And he had it so that he and I could wander off from the rest of the crowd touring different well-known places in Washington. So we drove over to Alexandria, Virginia, to see where he was stationed. We didn't go on the base, but we went down to Main Street where there were a few shops and there wasn't really anything else to do, so we walked in one of these little boutiques. And I saw something I wanted. All of my girlfriends in my class and the class above that ahead already had one of these items, and it was a crinoline. Do you remember wearing a crinoline? You know what I'm talking about. They were usually made of tulle and netting. They were layers of ruffles. Each row was a bigger ruffle than the one before, 3 and 4 ruffles deep. Well, I didn't own a crinoline, and I had been wanting one. Mama wouldn't give me the money to buy one. So while we were looking, he bought the crinoline for me. It cost $3. $3. I was tickled to death to get that crinoline. And so we get back home after our trip in Washington. We're having our graduation. And I was going to be wearing a white organdy street-length dress. The dress came at about the middle of the knee. It was so stiff, it stood out, and I was wearing the crinoline under the dress. I stepped out onto the stairs of the church. It happened to be the graduation ceremony was held at the Christian church. And, I guess there were about 10 steps down to the sidewalk. And there was my boyfriend and my sisters. They were all standing on the sidewalk waiting for me to come down the stairs. Now, I was wearing high heels then, 17 years old, wearing high heels. Just turned 18. That week, I turned 18. And it was all I could do to walk down the aisle of the church in those high heel shoes. They were sling heel shoes, sandals type. There wasn't much of a strap there to hold those shoes on my feet, so I was a little bit wobbly. Well, then when I came out of the church, my sisters and my boyfriend were standing at the foot of the steps, looking up at me. And what I didn't realize was the crinoline I was wearing was so stiff, and my organdy dress, the skirt was really a full skirt. All of the girls were wearing the full skirt those days because that's the only thing you could use for a crinoline. So I start down the steps, and when I got down, my sister said, "Pat, we could see all the way up your dress. Your dress didn't even touch that crinoline. It was so stiff, we could see between the crinoline and the dress as you walked down the steps." Well, that was the crinoline that I had been wanting for about 2 years because they've been very popular. In fact, one of the girls that was my sister's friend, she always played the piano for my sister when she sang solos for whatever affairs in church. And she was an only child, and I remembered going in her bedroom one day. I was with them, with my sister and her, and on her bed, it looked like an artificial flower standing up on that bed. I'd never seen anything like that in my life. That girl had at least 6 or 8 crinolines, and hers were the full ones, really full, with all the lace and the ruffles. And I just stood there with my eyes glued to her crinolines. I didn't know any girl could own that many, but she was an only child. Very pretty girl, very pretty. And I could count on her coming to church on Sunday morning, to Sunday school, in a new dress. Every Sunday she had on a new dress. Well, you know, when you're 16, 17 years old, you do a lot of dreaming, and you're wishing, oh boy, wouldn't I love to have one like that. So finally, after seeing, her name was Pat too, seeing all of her beautiful crinolines, I had my own $3 crinoline. So that was the story I wanted to focus on, so that some of you probably remember wearing those crinolines. You felt like Marilyn Monroe in her beautiful white dress where the vent was blowing her skirt up in the air. That's how you felt when you wore a dress or a skirt with a crinoline under it. It had taken us 10 hours to get to Washington, D.C. And my boyfriend took leave again and came to see me in my graduation. Now, what do you do on graduation night? Oh, times have really changed, I'm telling you. We didn't have limousines in those days. And a few of the students were lucky enough to get the use of Daddy's car. Well, actually, my boyfriend and I got the use of my daddy's car. And that's when Daddy had the big Hudson Commodore, big turquoise Commodore. Everybody was going to Cumberland Falls for the night, taking their picnics with them. They were going to spend the night below the falls. That's where you would go if you were going to see the moon bowl. But the moon bowl didn't happen to be shining that night. But we got down to Cumberland Falls. There was a beach then. And you could look up at that, I think it was about 125-foot waterfall with the moon right above it. Romantic. It was really romantic. And there I was, wearing my new engagement ring with my handsome boyfriend. And when he had on his white Navy uniform, he could draw attention. All the girls noticed him. He was a very handsome man. But anyway, I just wanted to remind you, ladies, that if you'd had a crinoline in those days, I looked it up, even on Amazon. That $3 crinoline I had would probably sell for $75 to $100 today. You just don't realize the changes in life. And why didn't I keep that crinoline? Well, they went out of style, of course they did. But I have my story to tell. I had my crinoline too. I got to wear it for high school graduation. I had full skirts. We could make a skirt. You buy 3 yards of fabric, gather it up, put a zipper and a waistband on it, pull that crinoline up under that skirt, and when you walked, it flowed back and forth, back and forth. Yeah, you could get attention. It was a fun time of life. The styles were as pretty as they've ever been. And you felt pretty when you got dressed up. And remember, girls, when you wore garter belts and you wore small panty girdles, they held you in firm. And when you put on your, what was it? The pencil skirt, called a pencil skirt. You could make one of those in 1.5 yards of fabric, and it came, about 4 inches below the knee. Fit skin tight all the way down. But in your panty girdle, your hose, nylon hose then, and we were still wearing hose with the seam up the back. You looked in the mirror at yourself. You twisted and you turned. And you said to yourself, gosh, I look pretty. Every girl looked pretty. We had natural color hair. Most of the girls wore their hair about shoulder length. Get it cut in the summertime just before school started. That's when I got mine cut. And my sister would give me a Tony perm. We would spend a half day in her kitchen while she put those curlers and all the lotions and everything smelled to high heaven. Whew, take your breath away. She would give me my perm. And from September till the next summer, my hair was never cut at all. But it had enough perm in it that when I rolled my hair, it would stay curly all week long. Yes, those Tony perms did the job. They made your hair look pretty. And there was no faking the colors. And I had the natural auburn hair, same color as my mother's. So this is just a little information for some of you that may have forgotten what it was like 70 years ago when the girls, there weren't any fat girls back then. If you had a 26-inch waist, you were considered overweight. I was lucky. I had a 23-inch waist. I understand Audrey Hepburn's waist was 22 inches. Now I can't compare myself with Audrey Hepburn, but I'd sure like to think I looked the same as she did when I got my full skirt on with my crinoline underneath and pretty sweater or ruffled blouse. I was ready to go to town. All the girls were like that. Not just me. All of my friends dressed the same way. We had ballerina shoes for our flats. We had the pretty high heel shoes. And we felt pretty. And we were pretty. All of the girls were pretty in those days. And you didn't see any fat girls. If only I'd been able to keep it that way, but as you can see, time grew, and so did I. And I can dream about going to Paris. I put on my dark shirt. I can look at it and it says, take me to London. I need to get a few more shirts like that have things on them you can identify with. They have places you've been or wish you could go. Now I want to show you this. See that right there? You can't see it too well from here, but that's one of my sisters. Can't you tell she's pretty? She was wearing a bakelite necklace around her neckline, and one of those little white crocheted collars that you wore with your dress. The necklace was large bakelite chain, but it had the cameo, black and white cameo. You can see that too. Yes, she's gone now too. 4 of my sisters are gone. She was the number 2 sister. Her name was Ada, and she was a beautiful girl. So, I just thought I'd point that out to you, since it's right over my shoulder where you can see it. And in fact, see the little Dutch boy and the little Dutch girl? She gave me those just before she died. That was one of those days when she says, "Have I got anything you would like to have?" And I said, "Yes. I want the Dutch boy and the Dutch girl." So I walked out of her house that day carrying these little figurines. You don't get rid of things like that. They'll stay in the family as long as I can keep them there. All right. I'm thinking I might get out this afternoon. I'm going to go visit Spectrum. I might even go in Marshall's. And what other store? I can hardly pass up Home Goods. And I haven't been in Home Goods in over a month. They're probably getting out their spring merchandise now. Put away the Christmas merchandise. They have a few things they put on sale. But with Christmas things, you can just save them till next year and put them back out again. So I may go into Home Goods, and I usually stop at Steak and Shake. Steak and Shake has a sandwich called the Frisco Melt. It's made of good beef, and I always order the Frisco Melt and a strawberry milkshake. That's my drink when I go to Steak and Shake, because they have the best milkshakes in town. I can't think of anything that's pertinent to today, anything you need to know. So I'm going to go get something to eat. That way I don't have to stop at Steak and Shake if I go to the mall. So I hope you've enjoyed my little story. It was supposed to be about crinolines. And I wish I had a picture of one. I got on Google, I could show you a picture of one that looked just like the one I had. So you probably have a story to tell about when you wore the crinolines and how good you felt, how dressed up you felt, and how you could walk down the street with your skirt swaying back and forth. Yes, it was a good feeling. You felt pretty, and we were pretty. So think about your high school graduation. What did you wear? Did you have a boyfriend? Did you get to wear a crinoline? That's it for today. Talk to you later.